Well, hello everyone, and welcome to another edition of the DC Capstone Report. It's great to be back with you to review a real game. Get to talk about the big game this past weekend against the Middle Tennessee State Blue Raiders. Alabama played a great game, and we'll get into that in just a few moments. But I want to thank Lance Shores for off the top. What a great job he's done just doing everything to produce this podcast. It couldn't be possible without Lance doing everything in the studio. He does a great job. And if you hadn't had a chance, go check out his sites, rolltidebama.com and freelancepictures.com. He took some wonderful pictures. And if you hadn't really looked at any of Lance's pictures, you don't know what you're missing. He takes some of the most beautiful images that I've ever seen on film. So go check out freelancepictures.com and rolltidebama.com for some great pictures from the Alabama Middle Tennessee State game. If you're a football fan, a band parent, a majorette, crimsonette, cheerleader, whatever, he's got pictures for everyone there to look at for the ball game. So check out all Lance has on freelancepictures.com or rolltidebama.com. Well, welcome to another edition of the DC Capstone Report. Here on today's podcast, in the first segment, we're going to review the victory against Middle Tennessee State. In the second segment, we're going to look at our players of the game, both on offense and defense. In our third and final segment, we're going to preview the upcoming game against the Texas Longhorns.
You're listening to the DC Capstone Report. The DC Capstone Report is featured each Tuesday morning on the Martin Houston Show at Tide 100.9. You can listen live at tide100.9.com.
Well, welcome back to another edition of the DC Capstone Report. We're glad you tuned in this morning on the podcast for a review in this first segment of the Middle Tennessee State game. Well, overall, I just want to say I thought it was a great first game for Alabama. Great first game for the new coordinators. Great first game for the new starting quarterback. Everyone played well. First on offense, just to kind of look at the overall picture of the game, I thought we had a really good game plan. And I really enjoyed the offensive coordinator, Tommy Rees, and the way he called this game. Some of the things that I like to look at is what are the differences. Well, we had multiple run plays called in this game out of multiple run sets. We were able to look like he was forward thinking, calling plays early in the game that would help big plays late in the game. Some of those deep balls that we were able to throw late in the game, Milroe did a great job on play action passing. Those worked because early in the game we ran out of those sets. And so I just want to applaud Tommy Rees for creatively calling more than one or two plays in the run game, having a whole forward-thinking look at what's going to go on to help it in the passing game. So I think it was a really good game plan. He did a really good job of calling the game. I think we had no penalties, so we limited our mistakes. That's one thing we wanted to see. That was a good change with no offensive penalties. The communication was good. I think overall just a good offensive scheme in running the ball and throwing the ball. Very balanced attack and gains yardage, both rushing and passing. However, we had more rushing attempts than we had passing attempts, probably on a 60-40 breakdown, something of that nature. But in my opinion, a very balanced offense from the get-go. The good things I saw on defense were the aggressiveness. You can really tell that Coach Steele has really placed his fingerprint on this defense. Kevin Steele always has a really good aggressive style, and I think we saw that coming out. This team was hungry, and they wanted to make some plays, and they really did a good job. I thought our pass coverage was good in phase. Maybe a couple of breakdowns, but mainly every person in pass coverage did a good job in phase. They get their head around, looking at the ball, and batting balls down, breaking up balls. Did have an interception in the game. Actually had 2 turnovers here that we were able to get in this game. So that's really good to win the positive margin on the turnover ratio. So I think our defense was good, playing, flying to the ball, running down, tackling, doing a great job. Limited them to just 7 points in the entire game. Actually, they were an up-tempo style of offense that we were able to corral to a point where we actually had more plays than they did. So that means we got off the field on third down. We held them on third down. That was one of my keys to the game, if you remember from last week's podcast. So overall, a great defensive performance as well. What would I say? Well, The negatives, if there can be any on defense, was just not the injuries that occurred to Jalen Key and Malachi Moore. We already have Devontae Smith out, so if they can't come back and play this week, who are we going to go to? We're going to see Tristan Story, Earl Little Jr., Trey Amos have to come in and make some plays in the backfield, and that'll put us pretty thin if Malachi Moore and Jalen Key aren't able to play. So I think that was a negative thing. And then when they got into the game, I think Earl Little Jr., maybe Christian Story, played with a little anxiety and made some mistakes, but nothing that cost us any points in the game. We just feel like I could tell they were out of position maybe on some of the plays. So look for that to get cleaned up, and that's what you want to do after your first game. Probably make your most improvement on defense after the first game to point out some things that you may have missed. So I think that'll take place. And then on offense, I think the only thing critical I could say about the offense was, we have 56 points. So what can you say about the offense? And you really have to get nitpicking here to do that. But I think there was two plays. One play where pass protection broke down due to a blitz that had been called by Middle Tennessee State. Who is at fault here? Not sure. I think you need to check out of the play you're in, and what that means doesn't necessarily mean to check out that play, but maybe check to a different protection scheme. The backer ran over Jamarian Miller and got to the quarterback and caused the sack. That's something that'll be learned. That's very critical, very technical, and something that'll learn down the road. But we need to make sure that we get all the right calls in this game against Texas coming up. But the other thing I think that was, in my opinion, that I'd like to point out, and I don't hear a lot of people talking about it, but I believe that the late move in fall camp to switch Booker out to the left side of the ball and Terrence Ferguson not starting kind of caused a little lack of gelling, if you will, in the offensive line. And I think it hurt us in the run game, but it may have helped us in the passing game of protecting the blind side. So I think Booker out there pushing him out to the left side did help Caden Proctor. But I think Caden Proctor did a pretty good job on pass protection himself. But I think that bully style, if we want that bully style of offensive running the ball, I think it would be, in my opinion, better if Booker stayed next to J.C. Latham and you have McLaughlin, Booker, and Latham on the right side. And I would play Terrence Ferguson on the left side next to Caden Proctor. I think Caden Proctor did a good job on his own. And I think that's the best combination of the offensive line. Nothing against Darren Dallacourt. I just think changing that in after they'd already practiced so much with Ferguson at the left tackle, a left guard, and Booker at the right guard, I think that just caused a little bit of out of syncness in the offensive line. So look for them to make a change. See if they do that in Texas game. Make a change. Just have Booker back at right guard and Terrence Ferguson at the left guard. Dallacourt is very good at what he does. I think he can come in and play and be interchangeable there at either one of those guard positions and do a good job. But that's my only critique. But that's just nitpicking. The offense did a great job at 56 points in the first game. I think it was really, really good. Defense, very aggressive. So a really good way to start the year at home in Bryant-Denny, 56-7 versus the Middle Tennessee State Blue Raiders. Well, we're back on the second segment of the podcast. Welcome back to the DC Capstone Report. Glad you're tuning in. Lance and I thank you for doing that. This is made possible every week by our sponsor, RollTideBama.com and FreelancePictures.com. Each week, check those sites out that Lance has. And then our sponsor of the podcast, Karen Cottingham Realtor with the Williams Group at Keller Williams right here in Tuscaloosa. She can fulfill all your real estate needs all throughout the state of Alabama. So if you want to get that condo, you want to get that game day condo, you want to relocate to the University of Alabama, got a student coming here, she's the person to call. Contact Karen Cottingham with the Williams Group at Keller Williams at 205-887-4008. Or you can look at her website and check out some of the homes that you'd like to see there at www.karen.thewilliamsgroupal.com. That's again, Karen Cottingham, 205-887-4008 for all your real estate needs here in the Tuscaloosa area. Well, the players of the game, I want to highlight several players of the game in this game against the Blue Raiders. Let's first start on the offensive side of the ball. And I don't think you can talk about any player on the offensive side of the ball without first talking about Jalen Milroe. The question has been every offseason, who's going to be the quarterback? Who's going to be the quarterback? And everybody has their favorites. And I know Jalen Milroe was not everybody's favorite. But it is clear from the start he had in this game, the way he played this game, and the length of time that he stayed in this game, that he is the starting quarterback for the University of Alabama until someone takes that from him or until he loses it. He's the starting quarterback. So let's all the Bama Nation get behind him as a starting quarterback. He did a great job in this game. Was Offensive Player of the Week in the SEC. But more than that, he got us in the right plays and most of the time. I've already talked about the one time that he didn't check, but very minor compared to all the good things he did in this game. Got us in. He got us in the right plays. Even when a play broke down, he did not panic. He turned that in with his athletic ability for a touchdown run. So, and he sets a record. The only starting quarterback for the University of Alabama in their first game to have 3 touchdown passes and 2 touchdowns running the ball. So just a fantastic job. I can't say enough about Jalen Milroe. And not only the play, but his availability to talk to the media after the game and his very thoughtful answers and the very critique that he gave himself and the truthful nature of what he's talking about. I think we are blessed to have Jalen Milroe as a quarterback at the University of Alabama. So he's one of my offensive players of the game. The second offensive player of the game is a wide receiver, Isaiah Bond. Had a touchdown pass in this game, but the play that set the tone, I believe, for the wide receiver room was the first play that he caught. And he just absolutely lowered his head, lowered his shoulder, and plowed over the defender. That in itself is the aggressive nature that we need to get back to the Alabama standard. He had another deep ball that would have been a touchdown, but he was tackled and pass interference was called. There was nothing else they could do. He'd already gotten past the defense. It was great route running, great play calling. And I love that Alabama came back to it. Tommy Rees remembered that, and he comes back to that same play, and we get a touchdown on it the next time it's thrown. So Isaiah Bond at a wide receiver position is my other offensive player of the game. And my third offensive player of the game is the tight end, Amari Niblack. He is just like advertised, folks. He is a mismatch. Took advantage of the defense in this game, got a touchdown, great hands, great blocking. He's truly a good blocker on the outside and just really has upgraded our tight end position. All of our tight ends, I believe, are upgraded over years past, but Amari Niblack is a true mismatch that I think will pay dividends in games later in the season. So my offensive players of the game are Jalen Milroe, Isaiah Bond, and Amari Niblack. Let's go over to the defensive side of the ball. The Kevin Steele aggressive defense that needs a play caller that can really communicate everything to the team. And my first player of the game on defense is Deontay Lawson. I think it all starts, this whole defensive team starts with the Deontay Lawson. We have a linebacker in the mold of some of our middle linebackers in the past, like Dante Hightower, Rolando McClain, Rashaan Evans, C.J. Mosley. We've got linebacker here that is able to call the game and communicate the defenses to everyone. He did a great job of that. And not only did he do that, but he was running sideline to sideline with his speed to tackle, to pursue, to coverage. Just did an excellent job. So Deontay Lawson is one of my players of the game. My other defensive player of the game is a player that got a lot of criticism last year, but I've always loved his character. I love the way he speaks, the way he talks about it, and the way he doesn't let things get him down, but bounces back and only does better, gets himself better. And that is Terrion Arnold. You know, he was lit up in a few games last year, and people criticized him, and they always went after him. And this year was no different. They came after him on the first play of the game, and man, he did a great job of staying with the receiver, being in phase, turning his head at the right time, and defending the pass. He did that on several pass plays and did a great job of coverage. So Terrion Arnold is a player of the game because he has improved himself over the last summer. And he spoke after the game about a term he calls LANK, L-A-N-K. And it's something that the team, himself and Jalen Milroe and others are motivating themselves from within. You know, Coach Saban says don't let an outside factor get involved. Don't listen to the noise. But what I think that he would be impressed is that they've listened to the noise of the naysayers and they've turned that into something that they can motivate themselves inwardly every day, not just for one game, but for every game. And that LANK, as he said, stands for let all naysayers know. And that's exactly what he did in this game. Everyone that had talked about Alabama, about him, about the defense, about coverage, and Jalen Milroe also, as a friend of Terry Arnold's, they share that LANK mentality. Let all naysayers know. And I'm here to tell you that he's my defensive player, one of my defensive players of the game, because he did just that. He let all the naysayers know that he's improved his game, and I think that's going to really be good for Alabama down the stretch. My third and final defensive player of the game is freshman Caleb Downs. He played a great game for Alabama. He's still got some things to learn, but in this game, he was a leading tackler. He was in on a lot of plays, in on a lot of coverage. And with the injuries that have taken place in that to Malachi Moore and to Jalen Key, a lot of more pressure is going to fall on Caleb Downs to kind of lead that safeties into this next game if they're not available. So Caleb Downs, Deontay Lawson, and Terry Arnold, those are my defensive players of the game. Well, welcome back here for the third and final segment on the DC Capstone Report. Let me again say thank you all for listening. We had over 1,500 listeners last week that either viewed our podcast on YouTube, Facebook, or Twitter, X as they call it now. We thank you for the views. We thank you for the feedback. We thank you for the shares. If you'll go to dccapstonereport.com, like, share our Facebook page, share us on YouTube, we sure would appreciate it. Share us on Twitter, whichever platform you're on. Share our podcast out there. We sure would appreciate it. We thank you for all our loyal listeners. I want to thank Lance again for being there for us to get this produced and does such a great job. So here in our final segment, we're going to preview the upcoming game against Texas. Second game on the schedule, but it's not just, I know the players say it's just the next game on the schedule. We can talk about it now, but I believe it's not just any other game, because last year Texas really thinks they should have won that game. And they're going to come in here with a chip on their shoulder to Bryant-Denny Stadium Saturday night. And I know they're coming in here thinking they're going to win. How do I know that? Because I was in Austin, Texas this past summer for a conference. And every Texas Longhorn fan I spoke to said how they were going to come into Bryant-Denny Stadium and how they were going to make quick work of us and leave with a huge victory because they think they're the better team. Well, I think Alabama has heard that. They've heard that Texas almost beat them. They've heard that Texas A&M almost beat them. They've heard that Notre Dame beat them and Tennessee beat them. And they've heard that so much in the offseason. I believe they really, really, really have worked really hard in the offseason to put the best part of the team on the field. And what they showed against Middle Tennessee State, if it will transfer over to this game, and as I said before, normally your defense gets better, most improvement between the first game and the second game. So I really think that we've got them coming into our stadium at the right time. Great crowd. We're going to win the crowd noise battle. It's going to be a great atmosphere. And if we can play within ourselves and back to that Bama standard, I really believe we have a really good shot in this game of not only winning, but winning it handily. So what are our keys to the game on this Texas game? I think as our keys to the game on offense is to maintain a balanced attack, be creative, don't be tight to the vest, set run plays early in the game that will set up big plays late in the game. I think Tommy Rees has done a great job. I hope he continues to do that. Limit turnovers and mistakes. We did a good job in the last game. We didn't have any turnovers and didn't have any mistakes. I think the defense on Texas is going to ratchet up a little bit. So they're going to be pawing for the ball, knocking the ball out. They'll be hawking for interceptions. And they're going to be rushing the quarterback. So we're going to have to limit mistakes and turnovers in this game to come out on top. And then we got to protect the quarterback. I would look to see on the offensive line early on, have they made any changes across the front, or are they going to batten down the same offensive line they had and just try to improve what they had? In my opinion, I think they'll go back. I think they'll see what I saw. I was trained by my best friend Gary Shores to look at the offensive line first. Gary always told me to look at the offensive line, start with the center, move out to the guards, and then to the tackles. That's the heart of your offense. And I just, after looking at this offensive line, I think we'd be better served if Tyler Booker was back on the right side of the ball next to J.C. Latham and Terrence Ferguson was the starter next to Caden Proctor. I think we see a big change, big dividends if that happens. So look to see if that happens. But the offensive line is going to have to protect Jalen Milroe, give him an opportunity to throw the ball. If he can have an opportunity to throw the ball, I think he has a chance to really show his athleticism in this game against Texas in throwing the ball and running the ball. Well, when Texas has the ball, we're going to have to limit the explosive plays. Texas likes to go deep. They have a great quarterback. They have a great offensive line. It gives him time to throw the ball deep. And they have some great wideouts that love to get deep, and they're really, really explosive. They can really hurt you if they do that. I think we got to limit those explosive plays. And how you do that? You got to rush the quarterback, put pressure on the quarterback. Don't give him time to make those extra long reads. Don't give him time to throw the ball deep. If you can affect him in the pocket, whether it's through pressures, hurries, or sacks, I think that goes a long way of limiting those explosive plays. And then we got to have great communication on defense. We got to be able to get whoever's playing in the back end to be able to communicate with the linebackers and defensive line to get in the right position and right times in order to limit those explosive plays. We got to be able to do that. And then I think another key of the game is to watch Worthy. Their wide receiver Worthy. He is a great player on offense and a great player on special teams. We got to limit his ability to make explosive plays. And finally, the thing that we really have to do is to shorten the game, is to get off the field on third down. Get off the field on third down. Don't give them any more opportunities to make plays than we can. And if we can do that, if we can limit our turnovers, if we can limit our mistakes, if we can get off the field on third down and maintain a balanced ball control offense and protect our quarterback, I really think we're going to come out of this game with a victory. I think some people are thinking it's going to be close, but I think Alabama, the crowd gives us the edge. I think Alabama athletically can outlast Texas. I think Texas stays with us for a while. But in the end, when it's all said and done, I think Alabama comes away with a victory under the lights in Bryant-Denny Stadium. And I have this game going Alabama 34, Texas 17. Well, that's it for this week for the DC Capstone Report. Thank you all for tuning in. I thank Lance back in the studio for making all this possible, and thank our great sponsor, Karen Cottingham, Realtor, with the Williams Group at Keller Williams. And you can always reach Karen at 205-887-4008. Well, thank you for tuning in. Share our podcast, like our podcast on all the platforms out there. And until next time, this is DC signing off with a big Roll Tide.